The Big Red One from 1980 is the story of a young group of American recruits in World War II who've joined the 1st Infantry, the Fighting First, the Big Red One of the title. And the film basically follows them throughout a number of theatres in World War II as they struggle to survive the conflict and struggle to look out for each other, and as they watch out for one another and watch as other recruits who largely remain almost nameless and faceless die around them. So quite an interesting movie. This one's based on the memoirs of director Samuel Fuller and his experiences in the Fighting First in World War II. Screenplays by Samuel Fuller, and it's of course directed by Samuel Fuller. So I can't think of too many war movies that are written and directed by the person they're about, the person that experienced it, and the person that was there. The only one that really springs to mind is maybe Oliver Stone's Platoon, but Oliver Stone's Platoon, of course, is largely fictionalised, so it is a different movie. This one does really play like a memoir. It does play like a series of vignettes that are patched together. It is almost like reading a journal. I don't know if that was intentional on the part of Samuel Fuller, or if he was basically just thinking, oh, I want this great experience, that great experience, or this terrifying experience, this memorable experience in there. So it does give the movie quite a surreal, schizophrenic feel, because a lot of it doesn't really seamlessly tie together, but it's all rather interesting nonetheless. As I said, quite a psychedelic sort of a movie, surreal sort of a movie. If you're looking for a popcorn war movie, this probably isn't the one. It does take a very grim view of the war, as you'd expect, being from someone who is actively involved. It's quite adept at showing the madness of war, the futility of war, and so on and so forth. Has some great scenes here. There's a particularly memorable scene involving an ambush with some dead Nazis, which I won't say too much about, that occurs near an abandoned tank. And that's quite a tense scene in the film, and one of the most memorable cinematic scenes that I can recall. So that's certainly one to watch out for. This movie doesn't really get a lot of love. It was made on a very low budget, shot entirely in Israel, which was probably quite surreal given the subject matter. And as I said, it's not really a linear plot per se. It more seems to be a pastiche of director Sam Fuller's experiences in World War II. So in that regard, it probably is as realistic as a war movie's likely to get. And presumably the director of this one wanted it to be as authentic as possible, you'd assume. So what we find is quite striking, quite powerful. One of the most interesting, one of the most amazing war movies that I can recall. One of the most devastating. But it is a bit of a yin and yang tonally. It is, of course, also quite surreal at times, quite eccentric at times. Some of the scenes have to be seen to be believed. And there's always a bit of an interesting juxtaposition between the action of the movie and the banter between the men of the Big Red One. There's an interesting subplot involving Lee Marvin, who first appears in the film in World War I, at the end of World War I, just after the armistice. And there's an interesting subplot that involves that, and also his search for redemption, for want of a better term. And yeah, so quite a good cast in this one. We've got not only Lee Marvin, who's playing the seasoned veteran that leads these guys, protects these guys, tries to look after these guys and get them through the war safe. There's also Robert Carradine, who you'll remember as Luke Skolnik from Revenge of the Nerds, playing quite a different role here. He's playing the Samuel Fuller character. And the most unusual casting perhaps is a very young Mark Hamill, aka Luke Skywalker. So well worth a look for any of those Star Wars fans out there that haven't been disenfranchised by by the direction that intellectual property's gone in. But yeah, quite a good performance in this one. Mark Hamill has his car accident scars very prominently. But yeah, the big red one, it's a little hard to find sometimes, but you should be able to track it down fairly easily if you do care to go searching. Even if you don't ordinarily like war movies, don't ordinarily find war movies interesting, this one is quite an interesting character study of a platoon. Not only a character study of a platoon on the Allied side, but it also kind of delves into the way that the average German soldier in a situation of despair may have felt at the time. And quite a mature movie in that regard. Samuel Fuller kind of does make an effort to see both sides of the conflict and the tragedy on both sides. As I said, tonally this movie is quite unusual because it does feel like a pastiche in a way of journal entries, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Personally, I'd rather see a Samuel Fuller war movie based on his own experiences that is kind of accurate, more than I'd like to see one that's coherent, if that makes any sense. So it doesn't harm the movie, doesn't cause detriment to the movie. Really, it just makes it an interesting, innovative, original experience in that whole war movie genre. And it's one that you will occasionally come back to and you'll find something new in. And if you haven't seen it before and you're interested in this sort of thing, I'd highly recommend checking it out. Samuel Fuller's The Big Red One from 1980. Really is one of the highlights of the war movie genre. And quite an interesting movie with those off-kilter, psychedelic sort of moments peppered throughout. And the way it kind of dances between super realism and hyper realism is quite effective, to be honest. So if you've enjoyed this one and you like these kinds of movies, by all means, please like, share and subscribe. And I hope to see you next time.